Listen, guys, you could sit on the couch and eat chips all day or work a 40-hour work week at a job that you hate, and that's all right. As long as you're happy with your life, that's fine. Maybe that's what you want. But if there's a part of you that is unhappy or has ambition for something else, I really push you to live on your edge. And what I mean by that is constantly trying new things and chasing your passions. Today on the Empty Cup podcast, we're talking about living on your edge and chasing discomfort. Part 2, we actually did go over this. But the reason that we are doing this again is because I think there was so much more that we have to talk about. And that was also the 3rd episode of ECP, so we're still figuring out so many things. Hopefully the audio will be working on this one, unlike that one. And of course, we have our 2 guests back today. Whatever Nathaniel is.
Yes.
We got Nathaniel. And we got
the
Daniel.
one, the only.
Thanks for joining me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. And you want to just go ahead and talk about the Way of the Superior Man? That's like the title is from the book, I guess. We kind of stole it. I stole it from.
So we could talk about that, but maybe it might be good to introduce people to like why you should seek discomfort.
Yeah, no, I would say from like the book's perspective on that.
Okay, so the book, The Way of the Superior Man, is a book I read just a few months ago, and one of the big chapters that had a large impact on me was living at your edge. And it specifically means, and I can create like a gym analogy. Say you're squatting, and there it is right there. Highly recommend.
I could
highly
throw it on the
recommend.
camera, actually.
Yeah. But so I'll use a gym analogy. And so say you're the most amount of weight that you can squat for reps is 200 pounds. And the whole point is that in order to experience growth and to push yourself and to become more, you have to rep right at that weight, because if you do too low, it's going to be easy, and you're not really going to experience much growth, nor will it be like very fulfilling to you to just constantly like rep like 50 pounds and just do it over and over again. It's kind of boring, repetitious, and will get you nowhere. And on the other side of that is if you try to squat 400 pounds, all it's going to do is you have the weight on your back and it's just going to push you to the ground. You might even hurt yourself, that sort of thing. So he talks there was one phrase in the book that was so well said, that if you're too far over your edge and stuff, you'll be like disconnected from your core. That's the whole point, is like the core, or is the edge of your core, the edge of expressing or pushing the self. And so if you're too far away from your core, you'll be disconnected. You can even hurt yourself. And if you're timid, not only will you not experience growth, but you might even like shrink or recess in your capabilities and your confidence for yourself. So the whole point living at your edge is constantly finding the edge of your core, the edge of your comfort zone, and pushing the boundary one little step at a time, to where you get to a point where you have many skill sets. You're comfortable in many situations in terms of confidence and self-awareness, being comfortable with yourself. And yeah, I'll wrap it up with that.
I think one thing that I found to be really true, at least for me, is that there's not really a good way to stay put anywhere. It's either you move forward and start, going and getting, expanding your comfort zone more and more, or you're going to shrink, like you said. It's like there's only 2 options. You can either go forward or backward, but you can't stay here. And so that's one thing that kind of will worry me if I'm not like pushing myself. It's like I'm not just staying at my current level. I'm going down. Yeah. And so that's like another, I find, big reason to kind of push yourself, is because if you don't, it's not gonna, you can't maintain it.
Absolutely. One thing that I heard one time that I just want to put out there for you guys is that you should be embarrassed by your past self at every moment. Because if you're not embarrassed by your past self, how you were thinking, how you were acting, what you were doing, that means you haven't changed or grown at all since then.
Yeah, I liked just going back earlier to when you were talking about weight training. A common thing you'll hear in the self-improvement realm is progressive overload,
Mm-hmm.
and I love applying that to every aspect of life. It's just like, oh, are you progressive? Basically, what progressive overload means in the gym is so starting with a very light weight to learn how to do the exercise, and then over time, as you get comfortable with the movement of the exercise, adding more, little by little bit, more weight until you're able to, do whatever your desired goal is or achieve the desired physique that you want. And so basically applying that kind of principle of constantly working on a skill and leveling up your skill, you should apply that to everything, not just progressive overload in the gym, but progressive overload to all your skills in life, and especially your passions, I'd say. And then I guess I would want to sum up the way the superior man, or like I guess this definition of living on the edge, I would ask you is like, would you say a succinct or eloquent way of putting it is rather having fear or anxiety to do something but still doing it anyway?
Yeah.
Is that a good
I think that is what courage.
That's also courage, yeah.
That's what courage is, and the point that he ultimately connects it to is he talks a lot about giving your gift to the world.
Yeah.
Whether that's just your YouTube channel that you're working on, my business that I'm working on, your many projects. Daniel here is a man of many talents, does many things, knows lots of people. All of that is a part of, and it's an expression of the self. And ultimately what you're going for by living at your edge is expressing your the highest version of the self, giving that gift to the world. And the only way to properly do that is to live at your edge and to confront what it is that you're afraid of and what gives you anxiety. And
it's scary to do that, to really be yourself and to be vulnerable out there. Because what if you give your gift, you give it as best you can, 100%, and nobody wants it? Like, that's pretty horrible. And that's what's on the table, because that very well might happen. Or at least a lot of people might not like it. People might even be angry at you. So I think there's it's a very incremental process where I think you slowly come out of your shell and you kind of get feedback from people, and you're saying, okay, because I think a good part of talking about authentic self, or who's the true you. Well, philosophers have been talking about that for a while. You ever just have a moment you're like, who the hell am I?
For real.
So it's kind of hard to say oh, be yourself. It's okay, well, thanks, but who am I and what does that mean? And so I agree that people should be true to themselves. But there's also another perspective, which is, what if somebody's true self is just a horrible piece of crap? Should they be their authentic self? Or maybe they should try and be something better. So I was curious what both of you thought on that, because it seems so clear. People should be true to themselves, but what if their true self's not good?
See, you're kind of entering into a big debate of whether or not people can be, or if people are inherently good and corrupted by their environments, or they are damaged by people around them or traumatic experiences, or whether or not people could, quote unquote, born with a sin nature, or can be inherently bad. That's a hard question, because honestly, I've read stories just on the internet about people who wow, they kind of seem pretty evil to their core. But I don't know that much. I think you should acknowledge that idea and that point that you made, but at the same time, on average, or just, it's best to assume for most cases, I guess, that people are inherently good in some sort of way, and that you do whatever you can to help them find that again if they tend to be a very negative or hurtful person. Because most of the time, the people who exhibit bad behaviors, treat people poorly, have been hurt themselves, and that's why they're acting out in that way.
So maybe this ties into that idea of integrate yourself fully and then choose to do good. So be your true self, you and all your bad parts, be that authentic part, and then decide okay, I might have these horrible parts of me,
Yeah.
but I'm going to choose the better path.
That's a good point, because within this realm of thinking, there's this term called your shadow, and it refers to like all the dark parts of you, all the horrible impulses and desires, emotional baggage, damage, all of that. And I think the point you made is an excellent point, tied to self-awareness and why you should be living at your edge and pushing yourself, because ultimately you learn nothing about yourself sitting at home doing nothing. And so in order to get to that point where you understand how you've been hurt, your emotional baggage, maybe the inherent dark impulses and thoughts that are tied to like your personality, to be aware of all that, and like you said, make the choice to aspire to goodness.
Yeah, I'll give my 2 cents on this. Going back to what you said on like, do you think people can, or some people are inherently just bound to be bad people if they truly try to be themselves? I think that goes back to like, what do you actually believe? Do you believe that like some people are inherently bad, or do you believe that it's really just a sum of nature and nurture, like the psychological or scientific way of looking at it? And I choose to shift to the latter of those two. I really believe that like most people are really a sum of those two things, like how you grew up and like your genetics and mental issues and whatnot. So I try to believe that, and with that understanding, I believe that like if you have to acknowledge what's happened to you and your issues, and also as a society we have to help people like that. But this is a whole nother issue and tangent. But it also, like what you mentioned about like people being inherently evil, or like how do you know what's inherently good or bad? Like we had that conversation with Otis where we talked about like, oh, this is the purpose of religion. It's kind of like the template for what your values are. And I mean that's a whole nother tangent on like, oh, that do you really need religion? But I don't really want to get into that today. To answer your question, I do believe that for the most part, people that generally had a healthy upbringing will have it easier trying to be their best self, because typically they won't end up being that nature, that side of it, you know. But for the rest of those people, you know, I guess it's argued as a society and their self-awareness to understand what they're going through. So yeah, that's, I guess, the first level of living on your edges, like, being true to yourself, I think, and knowing what do you like, knowing for yourself, like, are you satisfied with what you're going through? Like, are you telling people the truth? Are you actually happy with your progress or whatever you're doing? Because that's like the first level. If you're not true to yourself, then you can't be honest with others, right? It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson makes a good point
right.
that we talked about
straight
before.
out of his book. Yeah.
It's like, tell the truth, or at the very least, don't lie. And he means specifically, don't lie to yourself about the way, like, are you satisfied? Are you fulfilled with the way you're living your life, with who you're hanging with, spending your time with, etc.?
It's very interesting because you can go along with the notions of life. Some of us have our life figured out for us, not by ourselves, but like maybe by your family. Like, you know, a lot in like Asian culture, a lot of time it's like, oh, like be a doctor, be an engineer, like, and your parents, like my parents struggled to make a living, and then now that they're doing well off so that I can have a good education and good upbringing. And I'm really thankful for that. But also I wouldn't say I had a narrow pathway, but a lot of other Asian kids typically have a narrow pathway. They're like, oh, you have to go into this job field because of it's safe and it's secure, and as long as you work hard, you'll make a lot of money and you'll have a happy life. So basically, everyone just figures your own life for you, and you don't have to do any thinking about that. And you might think you're happy, but you haven't actually experienced like what your true passion is yet, because you haven't tried a lot of things. Which is why in the beginning I said like people should actively be trying to do a lot of different hobbies and pursuing different interests that might push them towards a different, college major or different interest. I thought I was like fine without doing a YouTube career, but now I started, and then like it's a really fun side gig thing, and crazy pipe dream.
Yeah, you've really come alive since you started this.
Yeah. Crazy pipe dream is like, oh, maybe I could do this full time, but like for now it's just a side thing. But I have a lot of fun with it, and I would have never figured this out unless I tried it, right? So that's my whole spiel on that. Is I think so many people won't know what their true feeling of passion is until they've tried something that they're passionate about, which is a sad reality, right? It's like, oh, you could think that you're happy, but you're not.
Yeah, I mean, you see that when parents, they have their kids and they're trying to push them, like, hey, like, try this thing, and their kid says no, and it hurts them. Why? It's because they know it would be good for them. So how do you be true to yourself and be your authentic self if you don't know yourself? Well, a good way to do that would be get outside your comfort zone and kind of experience who you are. Learn about yourself. Because if you don't know a certain decision, like, eventually you start to learn, okay, I don't like this, I do like this. I mean, even that's not completely accurate, because you'd be like, okay, well, I thought I liked this, but actually, like, there was a time I didn't think I liked sushi. So, yeah, that's like my favorite food. So,
Wow.
Yeah. And that all goes to, you have to reevaluate.
Wants to know your location. He hates sushi. You know who Andrew Tate is?
I've heard the name.
Okay, well, the joke didn't really hurt.
It landed on me. It landed on me, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So
I thought of the example for you specifically, BJJ. I mean, that had to be a really weird, it's kind of a weird thing when you think about it, especially going into that environment for the first time, and now you love it.
How did I know I was going to love it? It's the same thing with teaching. I didn't know that I'd love teaching.
How are you at the...
So as a PI, I do a lot of... for more like information behind that, so I'm a prototyping instructor for the Invention Studio. Essentially, I'm a volunteer whose my job is go and instruct people how to use tools if they come to you with a project and they say, hey, how do I do this? How do I make this a reality? My job's to help them do that or point them in the right direction of resources. But we do have specific training instructions, so specific checklists that we go through. I am not the best with some of the things, but even when I'm kind of incompetent, I absolutely love teaching. And same thing with jiu-jitsu is I've taught a lot of friends jiu-jitsu. And
you showed us that world.
Yeah. I mean, like one-on-one lessons kind of deal, and being very specific. And I love getting into the detail and showing like conceptually things and trying to improve them. And then I see them doing things correctly. And it's like, this is amazing.
That's awesome.
I love, so I didn't know that I would love teaching. But through pursuing things and getting out there, it's like, oh, I discovered this about myself. And now I can make decisions later on that will help me, because now that I can, now that I know one part of me that's true, I can go and express that in other parts of my life, and I can go and pursue that later.
I have a question for you. So you said you like your passion, or one of your passions is teaching, right? Do you think that's teaching, like specifically what you teach, or like because you're passionate about what you teach, that you consider teaching your passion? Or?
I think I wouldn't get the same amount of joy teaching linear algebra to someone.
Yeah. Because like I would say teaching in general, like it's kind of easy to figure out if you like teaching. It's just like because in general life you end up giving people advice or like talking, teach if you're sibling or whatever, you'd find yourself like, oh, like I enjoy giving people advice or teaching people whatever, but I guess it's because you're passionate about like a certain subject that maybe teaching is.
Well, it goes into other things too, because I really like helping people.
Interesting.
And actually that brings back, I think that's the whole point of seeking discomfort, because it's the best means of self-improvement. And what's the point of self-improvement? Why should you become better? Why is it valuable for you to become better? Because you become more useful to the world. You become more capable of making the world a better place. It's not for you. And I think that's why, like, maybe the first rule of seeking discomfort is thou shalt not seek discomfort at the expense of others. Because if you're improving yourself, but the world's now a worse place, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, no,
It's an excellent
I don't
point.
know.
I
Do you
literally
guys
just saw a
agree?
post. I literally just saw a post before I came over here about don't neglect the power of self-transformation, because the point he made is that you are a node. Every single person, he said, don't doubt the impact you can make, because you are a node within a growing network that is the world. And he said, you have immediate access to, like, say 100 people that you interact with on a yearly basis. Let's just say those people all have 100 people they interact with, and 100 people says, so he's like, you're one person away from 100, you're 2 people away from 10,000, and then like 1 million, and then 1 billion is pretty much what he said. So he said, don't neglect the power of self-transformation, because if you increasingly work on yourself to where the quality of every interaction that you have increases for the betterment of others, that's going to cause ripple effects on a scale that you will never see, that you'll never know about. But I guess if you think this concept through about how many people away you are from 1 billion, just 3 or 4 people away, then that should be like encouragement or a testament as to why you should seek discomfort. Following your rule.
Yeah, there's a very concrete example that comes to mind for me. There's a PI who's the master of the wood room by the name of Davis.
Yeah. Was that the guy you showed me to?
I don't know. Maybe no. I think that was Johnson. He's
Johnson,
amazing too. Davis has helped me a lot. Particularly, Davis showed me how to use the lathe and how to make pens. So, and through that, I've made several pens for people and spread more happy things. But because he spent the time to work on himself and become really proficient, he was able to give that skill to me. And then I'm able to either give that skill to other people who want to learn, which is in the plan. You know, I'm planning on doing that. And it's like, it spreads, it propagates. And now people, because when you give someone a pen that you made, it brings a smile to their face. Like every person I've given to, they really appreciate it. And now the world's slightly better, right? Like there's a little bit more happiness. And where did that came from? That came from that PI Davis who gave that to me. And it came from him, probably from other people as well. Else, but he had to spend the time working on himself and improving himself. So, I mean, that guy's amazing. He's an inspiration in a lot of other ways. And yeah, you might actually see him later today.
Cool. Nice. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I really like how all of our podcasts always intertwine. And like, as soon as you said about like elevating others and self-improvement, I thought of like, I think that was our last podcast where we talked about.
Yeah, we made that point with Duncan.
Yeah, we were talking about self-improvement, and the whole goal should be elevating yourself while elevating others while you elevate yourself. That's the true way to do self-improvement, which isn't unfortunately being done by everyone. You know, everyone's trying to cope to find happiness nowadays. That a lot of people just end up doing it through bringing other people down, or they think they're doing it, or coping with themselves at least by just bringing other people down, because I guess it makes them feel better about themselves. But the reality is, you can actually be happy while making other people happy. Like I feel like that's the ideal world that we are striving to live in.
Well, we're definitely, from an evolutionary perspective, wired to experience more fulfillment and more joy helping others, because ultimately when it comes down to survival, the health or quality of your clan or your tribe is pertinent to your survival. You don't we're going way back. You don't survive alone. And stuff. You'll never make it as the lone wolf. Like the strength and the probability of your survival and your well-being is directly connected to the strength and well-being of the tribe. So that's why living a life that's others focused, of constantly attending to others' needs, of helping the tribe, your community, your friends and relationships, is literally like biologically hardwired to make us happy, fulfilled, and enjoy our lives more.
Yeah, we'll be more successful that way.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about being scared and doing things anyways. And that's one way to try and be authentic. And I'm going to tie this in. So I used to be, and I still am, I'm a very anxious person. I've met very few people who can rival me. But
you can tell.
What was that?
That you can tell.
Yeah.
Lifetime anxiety.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
of course
kind of shocking, because honestly, like I admire like how much you embrace like your personality, I guess. Whenever I'm around you, I'm like, man, that dude just says and thinks and lives exactly how he wants. He doesn't give two fucks.
No, but
It's not even that. It's also you seem very composed, I'll say. So it's hard to tell that you're.
So
Either that, you're holding in very well.
Go on, please. We just want to put that out there, of course.
I appreciate your thoughts. Yeah, no, I thank you for that. So with that, it's how do I become the best version of me? Given that, so this is the decision I made when I decided that, okay, like the seek discomfort, like I'm gonna go out and do those scary things. It's because in order to be the person I want to be, I'm going to have to do things that are scary to me. I'm going to have to go out there and do it, despite feeling that way. So, seeking discomfort and doing discomfort challenges. The anxiety is not going to go away. I'm always going to be this anxious person. So maybe I should get really good at the skill of doing things that scare me, despite that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what led me down that. So that I'm still the same anxious person. I'm just a lot better at dealing with it.
Yeah. And your life's better too now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Me compared to then is a big jump.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I would think that confronting the things that make you anxious would make you less anxious. But you don't think so. You think you still live with it. It's just maybe you get better at coping with it, or I don't know.
You have experiences now, though. Whenever this is my thought, is that you still have that anxiety, and I feel the same way. You still always have that anxiety and that fear, but now you have testimonies of your past experience speaking to the fact that when you confront and overcome those anxieties and fears, you get to a better place in life.
Yeah, so there is that, which confirms it, and so there's that. We can go into cognitive behavioral psychology, where people are trying to get over fears. If they have a specific phobia towards something, they actually don't get rid of the fear. You can't extinguish it so much as you make the person braver. And the reason why they know this is because if you help somebody get over a specific phobia, it doesn't just help them with that phobia. It helps them with fears everywhere. So they didn't just get over the fear, they became a braver person. And so that's why I think it's important, is because you might think you're seeking discomfort in one area, but so say you're scared of singing in front of other people. You do that, it doesn't just help you sing in front of other people. It helps you in all the other areas that you're scared of. It's building up that skill. It's helping you become a braver person. And braver people can then go and do more scary things.
Yeah, I think about that all the time because every morning, whether I go to the gym or not, I do a cold shower, right? And
you do?
What?
I didn't know you started doing that consistently. What? You take a cold shower every morning?
Yes, we've talked about this.
We talked about it. I didn't realize you were doing it consistently.
I do it every day, yeah.
Okay, and power to you.
Sometimes twice a day because it's so hot. But when I don't work, especially when I don't work out in the mornings and I have to wake up before like our study sessions, I just stand there and just like staring at the water for like 10 minutes, just not wanting to do it. But it's like, I know if I don't do that, it's gonna like set me off. Like I know that every time that I want to do something in my head, but I have to confront like some sort of like anxiety or fear or whatever. Obviously it's a very small level of anxiety or fear because it's just like, oh, it's gonna sting and then it's gonna be okay, you know. But the fact that I want to do something that I'm anxious about and I do it, it's like you build up confidence points or courage points or whatever. And every time you do a little bit of that, your courage just goes way up. And then you're able to do a lot of cool things that maybe that the person you were a week ago couldn't do, or a month ago couldn't do, or a year ago couldn't do. And I think that, like you said, it translates to probably everything that you do. Which makes me think that I should like confront all my fears of like cockroaches. And man, every time I see a cockroach, I just like jump. Basically, my parents know.
One point about the cold showers, because I do as y'all know, I've taken a cold shower every single morning of 2022, and a point I want to make is that one of the benefits is it sets the tone for the day. Because one of your first decisions, because I just literally get out of bed, go straight, take a cold shower. And so like my first decision of the day is to attack. because it's still difficult some days, even though I'm like 180 plus days in. It's still difficult sometimes, and I still every morning have to make the decision, and I think it sets a good tone for the day. But also a point I want to make for the audience and for us as well is that I've noticed that when it comes to like going to events, trying new things, and I've been given this advice, is you have to immediately make the decision to like attack it head on, because like if you wait more than 5 minutes, and this is like, I've even heard videos of like science behind this, like the probability of you actually doing that like decreases exponentially the longer you wait to do it.
5 seconds? I heard it was okay. Maybe it's different for different things, but like I've heard it's like 5 seconds you should make a decision.
Yeah.
After that, just don't stand there.
Exactly. But like an example is like saying you're going to a social gathering where you may know like one person, but you don't know anybody, and like it's like, okay, you have an opportunity to just meet new people, network a little bit, you know, see what can happen. And I've had very I've had personal experiences that are testimony to this, that the best where that night played out in the best way possible was when I immediately walked up to somebody and just started talking. And I go from one stranger to the next. I would not hesitate the whole night. I would have an amazing night. Get so many new Instagrams, numbers, etc. But the nights when I waited for a few minutes, where I said no to myself, when I like saw the person like go walk up to them, and I'm like, no, I came up with some ridiculous reason to justify not doing that. I ended up being like quiet, and you just become very reserved, and ended up not really doing anything.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was gonna mention something. Oh yeah, what you said about cold showers, because you say you tackle it first thing. I would also say that even if I'm having like a very unproductive morning, like say I'm in my bed just like watching anime for like an hour, and I'm like, wow, I feel like a real piece of shit right now. Like I need to get up and do something. Then I'll go take the cold shower. You know, however long it takes me to convince myself to do it, and then I'll feel like charged, ready to do like the next task. It's just like, okay, I got this done. I'm ready to do the next thing and be productive. It's like a reset if you're feeling lethargic.
Builds momentum.
Yeah.
I find that doing push-ups also does that.
Really?
Yeah.
There we go.
Just get done.
Cold showers and push-ups.
It's the same time. Ultra productivity mode. Reads a book on the floor of the shower
while doing push-ups.
You only need 1 hour for push-ups.
That word you use though, momentum. That's a big one. Of course, a bunch of like entrepreneurs and people in the productivity space talk about building up these small wins, but it does. It does help, just building up like momentum of getting these few wins each morning, of taking a cold shower, getting to your study sessions on time, starting right away instead of like talking about random shit and stuff. It just all helps into like being, you know, finding that flow state, that zone that you're always hoping and striving after.
Overcome the inertia.
Yes.
So a little bit more about the authentic self. And it's not going to be clear how this connects, but you'll see in a moment.
Okay.
There's this show called Avatar, The Last Airbender. I'd been told many times, hey, you haven't seen this? You're crazy. What? And so I was like, okay, fine, I'll watch an episode. And I ended up binging the entire thing this summer.
Good.
It was amazing.
We're still friends.
Yeah,
good deal.
It was amazing. I think it was good. I think it's the best work of philosophy, period.
Absolutely.
And so here's how it connects to the authentic self, which is that I think inside all of us, there are these collection of elements, and we have to balance all of them. You can't be too far in any one direction. So say you're really strong-willed, you're just like go grind. That's the Fire Nation, right?
Yeah.
And it's like that'll push you, you know, we're talking about the edge, right? That'll push you over the edge, and now you're miserable and the people around you are miserable. Now you're like injured. It like pushes you that far because you want to just go. You've got to balance that with like, you know, the
water, which is the ability to flow, be adaptive,
or the air benders who are, you know, they dance, they sing, and they're full of life. So you know, like hanging out with friends, like having that, and you know, same with like the rock. Sometimes you need stability,
grounding. So
you need to balance all these elements in yourself. Like go out and explore the world, right? But like if you're doing that your whole life and you're constantly floating and full of that, just freeing and all that, you need some sort of stability too. You've got to balance these two things. You've got to balance all these different elements inside of yourself. So an example of that, like if you're pushing too hard, This is easy to do with seeking discomfort because you can be like, okay, go, 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 grind, grind, grind. But then you'll have an excess of the Fire Nation going too crazy. And I've experienced that a lot with like, I have not gone more than a week without some sort of injury or physical ailment in well over a year.
Wow.
Just constantly something injured me. Like, and that's what's kind of scary. And that's one of the dangers of going too far over the edge with anything is that you might not be able to bounce back. Like a little bit will make you stronger, but there are some injuries that you'll carry with you forever. Like there's literal scar tissue in your joints or that kind of thing. Like I got thrown, I'll have to show you a video later. You might want to clip it in because it's so funny, but I was thrown and I couldn't tuck my chin properly and I smacked my head straight down. Ooh. And that was months ago. My neck was really sore for that and it was a bad injury, but even now, if I lean my head, I can still feel the pain. So that's why it's important, like, push yourself, but not too far, because then you'll have the excess of the Fire Nation. Just like in the show, the Fire Nation went way overboard, and it was hurting the Fire Nation. The people living there weren't having a good time. They were impoverished. There was pollution everywhere. So same thing. So I think that show has a lot of other applicable things. Wow. And you can start to point different areas of your life and be like, okay, am I balancing? Am I too much water right now? Is what's going on here? Do I too much rock? Am I too stable? Do I need to inject some fire and water in there? Maybe some air in there, that kind of thing.
Wow. You just took one of my favorite shows and made it even better. Mm-hmm. I had not thought about it to that level yet.
Yeah,
but I love it.
Yeah, I think it kind of applies everywhere. I mean, of course, it's just like a guideline or like a toolkit. A lens you can look at things through. Mm-hmm. But how do you think that applies, like, in terms of seeking discomfort?
I think you just did a great explanation of it, I guess. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was just thinking of your scenario. It sounds like, I guess you need a little bit more water, because one of the components of water was that healing factor. Mm-hmm. So healing factor, being able to flow and be adaptive to change or newness. And I really liked the way you described air too, because I think I went through a phase where I completely cut off air, where I was like very, very antisocial, so serious and so heavy on myself in the way I viewed life. And it was, I honestly kind of got to a worse place, which was the opposite of what I was trying to do. I mean, ultimately, I've just been trying different mindsets and different ways of living my life to make me like life more. Yeah. And did the opposite of what I was trying to do. And so that's, I guess, a personal example of what you were speaking about.
So you are your own avatar, and you must bring balance to all the parts of yourself.
Wow. Damn. You can quote that.
You got to master all the elements of your personality.
You're blowing my mind right now.
It's an amazing show. I'm so glad I watched it.
I'm so glad. I was scared for a second about our friendship. Like, I thought you were going to say something bad about it. I was like, no!
I mean, Sako was good, but that Aang kid, I couldn't get behind it.
He's kind of, let's be honest. No. I'm joking.
Pitchfork.
Yeah, we're coming after you.
Sorry, you mentioned airbending as like, I just had to look at it. I was reading into this to refresh my mind, but I don't know if there's any, like, I guess it's because of the war, but I'm trying to remember, like, which one of them were like I guess airbending stands for freedom.
Remember the episode when Iroh specifically explained all the elements to like Prince Zuko when he was trying to teach him how to lightning bend? Yeah, you should reference that episode. By the way, I believe it's like episode 17ish or maybe 13ish in the Earth series. If you want to go look up that explanation. But did you find anything?
No, I completely agrees with what you were saying. But yeah, I guess we're all trying to, like, what they call it here is energy bending, is when you're using, I think, all four. I want to quote this right. I don't want to say it wrong. Energy bending is the art of bending energy within one's body. Does that even have to do with
the example of that in the Avatar series was in the final episode when Aang took away Fire Lord Ozai's firebending, and that's from this website. That's the example of the energy bending when Aang was finally perfectly balanced, and he was, I guess that was revealed to him through the lion turtle touching his head and chest.
Getting deep into this tangent.
Gosh, I'm just nerding out so much right now.
I think it's very applicable.
Yes. Wow.
I guess I'll apply it to what you were asking. But I think, we have like all these personality tests, especially in the business world. There's like, oh, what kind of leader are you? Take this test. And I think, like you said, like all these things it's useful to know yourself well. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Because that's how you build yourself up as a person, is knowing, especially if you're on a team, it's like knowing how can you guys like complement each other. Is it going to be a problem if you have multiple dominating personalities? I'm sure you've experienced this as
Wow.
I mean, I know you're a dominating personality, so I'm just saying that. But
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, I was thinking you can take this whole idea to the next level, where all the 4 elements might not be like equal in nature. Like every person might have a different area or a version of balance, and you take it to the next level. We balance each other out when you're working in cohesion. Because I'll admit, I definitely have a propensity for the fire bending or those type of attributes and stuff, and I can be too dominant or too assertive or too insensitive to other people, and might need a little water to balance me out,
Yeah, or like those hippie people.
Exactly.
Way too much air.
Oh,
like
I think it's just, if you're trying to live on your edge, it's important to acknowledge what your weaknesses and what your strengths are, because if you're talking about providing value, like you said before, providing value to society, you really need to know what your strengths are so that you can project those and then work on your weaknesses, or have someone that complements your weaknesses so you guys together can provide the most value. So that's what I'll say is like that's what I would take from a show like that, or from any of these personality tests, is like knowing yourself so that you can provide the most value to society. Because as you said today, the whole point of living on your edge is to, at the end of the day, find your passion so that you, and also just figure out the best way that you can provide value to society.
Have you heard of the book The Tao of Pooh?
No. Please
It's
elaborate.
a book about Taoist philosophy written using Winnie the Pooh characters.
This is from the Tao Te Ching?
Yeah, it's sort of a derivative.
But it's from
of
that method.
Yeah.
Ideology. Wow, I'm
That's
extremely intrigued. Please.
It's, I think,
elaborate.
a very digestible and very fun read.
I want to read this now.
There's one chapter. It's a short book, but there's one chapter about inner nature, which is that you should figure out your inner nature, and then kind of the way you walk your path should be in line with your inner nature. So an example of this is I originally transferred to Georgia Tech as a CM major, because in my mind I was like, I'm really bad at art. Let me go and become good at art and like really pursue it. And then, but it's like, turns out I'm not good at it. And it's not in line with my nature. Like, it's really against it. But then as I've discovered more mechanical things, like working with machines, building bicycles, that kind of thing, that's way more in line with my nature. And when I do that, not only am I better at it, more useful to others, but it makes me feel better as well. So,
and I want to make the point, it's still technically what you're doing in a more like mechanical engineering focused setting. That's still an expression of art. The way the stuff you're doing as a PI and the invention studio of creating like 3D printing stuff, woodwork, embroidery, all of that. You just, like you said, that type of art is more in line with your nature than I guess like the digital design you were doing.
Yeah,
and music
that kind
stuff.
of thing.
Yeah, we all have our own like expressions of art that are true to us.
Yeah, when I was, the irony is that the more I tried to be an artist, the less artistic I was. And then it kind of just bloomed out of me being true to myself. Because everyone, I think, has an like artistic component to themselves. But when you try and pursue, like some people are like really artsy people, and then some people are not so. And then it started to bloom out of me once I became more focused in like expressions of mechanical things. And then, as I'm doing that, it's easier to have that side of me come out.
And you never would have discovered that if you didn't do new things.
Yeah.
So guys, if you want to become more creative, more artistic, experience that side of life, which I would highly recommend, gotta try new things.
I'm talking your ASMR voice.
Say what? I don't know. Because I recently started like reading a little bit of poetry and stuff, and talking to some close friends of mine who are really big into writing, and just like thinking, or at least like exploring whether or not I like writing, and that's a form of art that I like to express my way in. So I guess that voice I switched to was just, I don't know, what I kind of veer towards when I'm getting like creative or goofy.
And I think that's important, because when you're seeking discomfort, maybe don't seek discomfort in ways that are out of line with your inner nature. Because it would be really uncomfortable for me to go and pursue really artsy things. Yeah, it would be hard. It would be challenging. And I would hate it, and it would suck. And I wouldn't be a very good artist. Yeah. Would it push my comfort zone? Yeah, probably. But not in a good way. It would be better for me to do things in line with my nature.
But counterpoint, I think to fully understand your inner nature, you have to try things that maybe you wouldn't like necessarily think would be your fit. Mm-hmm. But I think you should you won't know for sure until you try things, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%
you're
agree.
100% bound to hate some things that you try if you
mm-hmm.
go on this path. But I think that's just the process of learning, and that's also the beauty of life is knowing, okay, I tried it, I know I hate it. I can never have that regret later in my life that I never tried it, because now I know that I tried all these set things, and this is what worked for me. This is what I really like. This is what I can provide the most value to society by doing, or this is what I enjoy doing the most, even. And you won't have any regrets too.
Yeah. Finding out what you don't like is some of the most useful things you can figure out while seeking discomfort.
That's a great point. Great point.
So, what do you guys consider for yourselves, or what activities do you do that you consider living on your edge? Let's talk about us.
Okay. So specifically right now to me, and I literally was experiencing this morning, mm-hmm. is the work I'm doing for my business, because I am constantly, every single day, learning new things, and it's pushing me outside of my comfort zone constantly when it comes to learning about Facebook marketing. And literally I'm DMing potential clients on Instagram and Facebook, and I'm holy cow, these people could actually respond, and then I would have to talk to them online, and we would make plans to do business together, and I'd have to figure out how to do that. And the whole process is honestly just terrifying, because it's rooted in a fear of failure. But like we said before, I still gotta go after that, because unless I constantly, it's a daily battle of just imposter syndrome, not believing that I can do it or that I'm worth it, fear of failure. But I'm your life isn't going to change. You're not going to get to where you want to be unless you go for it. And I tell myself constantly, there was a moment this morning, actually, about 3/4 into our studying session, where I was just paralyzed almost, because I was so uncomfortable with what I was trying to learn and what I was trying to do. And I just telling myself you're fighting for your future. Mm-hmm. For the desirable future that you want mm-hmm. for yourself and for your family, friends, community, etc.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you, Nathaniel. So you're saying that imposter syndrome that you face, my understanding of imposter syndrome is just not believing that you can be successful with that currently?
Yeah, an example, imposter syndrome is you see all these people online, especially these days, of success stories mm-hmm. and stuff, and thinking that that someone else can do that. That's for someone else. Mm-hmm. That they can do that. Yeah, they can succeed at that, but not believing that you yourself have what it takes or can become what it takes to accomplish what they have or what you want to do.
Okay, so that's obviously one of your limiting beliefs.
Yes. Yeah, it's definitely in line with limiting beliefs.
But my second question is, do you think that you figured out if this is your said passion, and B, if it is your said passion, or if you're still questioning if it's your said passion, is that another limiting belief for you?
Well, I'm not questioning it, because I've very much, and I even started to figure this out around the end of high school, and my experiences so far have very much reinforced the idea that I love the business world, or the idea of being a businessman, mm-hmm. of owning or managing your own company, thinking about being the leader of a team, of doing business with or doing work with other business owners who are leaders of their own team. That's just the type of people that I believe or look forward to interacting with, and the type of work that I'll be doing. That's again, you as a entrepreneur, business or owner, you always have to be living at your edge, because you have to constantly be learning mm-hmm. new things. You have gone off the beaten path. Mm-hmm. And you are finding your own version. And so that means you're swinging your machete, trekking through the jungle, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I know, or at least up to this point, know that I am right now trying to build this business is in line with what I should be doing in pursuit of my highest self. Mm-hmm. Or so was that an answer? I think that was an answer to your question.
I was just curious because a lot of the times we, as humans, especially my nature, is to quit early before I even like discovered that, okay, this is something I was successful or like something that I enjoy doing. And I think that's a limiting belief or a bad mindset to have is giving up on things before you can actually figure out if it's something you're passionate about. Maybe it's because you haven't had the right set of circumstances for you to actually think, okay, this is what I want to do, or maybe some other reason or whatnot. But like, I guess I'm just curious to know if like, how would someone know? How long would it take for them to know that like something is indeed like something that like a passion of theirs?
That's a really hard question.
Because you spoke on this earlier too, about when it comes to like, don't force yourself to do things that are out of line with your nature and stuff. Because there is a balance of like pushing yourself, but like don't be making yourself miserable doing things that is just like draining your will to live. And I guess the answer I just thought of is that it's very difficult what I'm doing, but every single tiny win or every single like step I make in the right direction like excites me so much and fills me with like joy in life. And I can be like on top of the world when I learn something new, or be like, whoa, like 2 weeks ago this scared you, or you had no clue about this knowledge of like Facebook or marketing and stuff, and now you find it clicked, you understand it, and that just like it lights a fire in me. I'll have a hard time going to sleep sometimes because I'm so elated. And does that answer your question about?
Let me ask you another.
For initial things, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you need a bit of trial. I think. Oh well, here's an example. Is I tried out the gymnastics club a while back, and when I went to their meeting, like it was cool and all. I really liked the people, but I was just like, I don't think this is for me. But when I do gymnastics, because I've been training a little bit by myself, just doing YouTube and like, doing very basic things and getting into it, and I really like that. So sometimes it can be hard to tell because the context depends on it. Maybe you like cooking, but you don't like cooking in a kitchen with other people or professionally in a kitchen. So I think, though, if you analyze and you kind of reflect on yourself of like, is the true element of this something that I enjoy? Or because sometimes you enjoy things, even something you're not passionate about, you'll enjoy in certain contexts, but you don't enjoy like the real root of it. So if I'm with friends, I'll probably enjoy an activity I don't normally enjoy. Maybe the thing I'm not passionate about, but I really am passionate about, enjoying people and enjoying friends. Then that makes it okay. So it's kind of the flip side of like, you can try and separate the context from the actual thing. And then you can decide whether it's the context you like or the actual thing. I think you could know pretty quickly whether you like something, because the more you do it, you'll probably tend to like it more. Although there will be days that it sucks and you kind of hate it, in which case you might need to take a break and come back. But for figuring out whether you like something or not, what would a grandma say? She would say, like, if you try new food, eat 3 bites. So maybe figure out what that, because 3 bites isn't very much, but it's not one time this sucks. It's let me experience it a little bit more. And maybe take that same thing, try it in a few different contexts. If you hate broccoli, maybe you've only had it boiled. So try it air fried, roasted.
Roasted's way better, bro.
Yeah. So you think you might not like it, but you might need to have it in a different context. But if you separate, you see 2 contexts of the same thing, and then you realize, okay, yeah, I really don't like broccoli. There's something about it. I don't like it roasted. I don't like it boiled. I don't like it steamed. I don't like it raw. Like, okay, maybe you don't like broccoli.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a very interesting argument, or it brought up a very interesting specific topic in my head of, with parents, they go through a certain lifestyle, or they play some sports or whatever it is, and then they have kids, and they're like, okay, I want my kid to turn out a certain way, like whether it's playing a sport or doing a certain hobby or going to a certain profession, and they try to drill that into their kid's head of like, oh, you need to do this. And I see multiple ways that this turns out. A lot of times it might lead to the kid resenting the parent for
Too much Fire Nation.
Yeah. Or sometimes they'll resent them for a while, but then eventually they'll be thankful that they did that. You're like, oh, this was actually really beneficial. I hated it before, but now I love it. I see that a lot in like the Asian community a lot too. It kind of it depends on every scenario. But it really just raises, I guess it makes this situation so circumstantial. I guess that's the word. Because you never know how it's going to turn out. I don't think it's really healthy for a parent to like force a kid to do certain things, but I understand why parents do that because we always want our kid, like we want the best for our kids, or we want our kids to live the lives maybe we didn't have either. So it's, I say kid, I want our kids like I have kids, but I'm not even close to that point yet. My point is, I guess it's difficult, especially when you're dealing with another person. Talking about like living on your edge for yourself, and then I guess like finding your passion. Finding your passion for yourself, but then like trying to enforce that your passion or a certain different passion onto like your kids or whatnot, or friends even. It can be kind of toxic, but I don't know, maybe it works out. I guess I'm kind of giving this as a question to you guys. What do you think? Like, why is that? Why is it that it can always turn out different ways?
Well, people have different different
I
natures.
I answered the question and then I gave it the question back.
Yeah, I have a few thoughts on it, because people have different natures, and when we care about people, we do want them to push themselves and seek discomfort and explore, because you want them to find themselves more. A recent example of this is I met someone recently in the CRC. She actually came up to me and she was like, oh, you do jujitsu? I do jujitsu. And so I was training with her, and then recently she told me that she...
Daniel.
Oh, no, her boyfriend was there too. So he's a great guy too. But the reason why is that later she was messaging me thinking about going to a recent a tournament that's coming up soon. And I was like, yeah, you should. She was like asking my opinion whether she should do it. And I was like, yeah. And she said that a lot of like the upper belts at her gym were also telling her. And it's like, that's a sign that like the people who care about you would want you to go and do it, because she's really uncomfortable, particularly in the stand-up portion of it, because all competition matches start standing, and a lot of people, so certain gyms don't train very much stand-up, and people might be, especially she's smaller, so a lot of smaller people typically will pull guard, so they sit immediately. She's uncomfortable with that, and it's like, I think me and the upper belts at her gym both see that training at a competition is very uncomfortable, and she'll learn a lot, and her jiu-jitsu will be better. And also her confronting the stand-up portion. She can't run from the stand-up portion forever. And it would be good for her to go and have that uncomfortable experience and learn and grow. And it's because I think all of us want her jiu-jitsu to be the best it can be. So with your kids, I think it would be, you want to push them to do uncomfortable things and know that you'll support them. But also try and listen to their nature. For instance, like with her, she says she wants to just be a guard puller. She doesn't ever want to like really learn takedowns and that kind of stuff. And that's like, some people don't, but maybe you should still have the exposure to it to make sure that's the case. And maybe that's just, not in her nature. She doesn't want to do that game. That's fine. She can be really successful with it, but with like pulling guard and that other stuff, but it'd be good for her to know.
Interesting.
So I think that might be one way to answer that. And it goes back, like, what would a grandma say to that question? It's that she would probably want you
Depends on the grandma.
Well, yeah, but like the idealistic grandma archetype in our heads that we can extract away.
We have different definitions. But
you mean just the, like,
when you said that, I was like,
yeah,
I don't understand
that's
that.
simple wisdom.
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
like old people wisdom.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think a good point I thought I had to your remarks is to make sure you're not projecting onto other people too much, is to understand, to take the time and put an effort to understand who they are and where they're coming from. And if because I fell into a trap where I was doing this on some people close to me, where like all these changes and things I was doing for my life, I just like project on everybody around me and be like, because this works for me, you should do it too, and you need to start doing it right now, and I might judge you. I have judged people in the past for not like lining up with my choices quickly, because of course they should be doing it because that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, totally. But realizing that like that's a form of projection, and honestly, as I be like an adult for longer and longer, as I live more years being like very aware with my behavior, I just kind of chuckle and laugh at myself of like how many, I don't want to say wrong decisions, but just like foolish or immature, or like, yeah, Nathaniel, you really had no idea what you were talking about or what you were doing. And so the point I was making is that I don't jump too quickly to project my behavior or thoughts onto people I don't know that well too quickly, because I haven't taken the time or put in the effort to know and understand them. And there's, as I've learned, is that there's a big chance that I might not even be right or not know what I'm talking about as much as I think I do.
Yeah, no, I get that, because I tell every person I meet, jiu-jitsu? Oh, I do jiu-jitsu. Yeah. You should do jiu-jitsu. You should do jiu-jitsu with me.
Yes.
I'll teach you anytime. But then I try to like limit, be like, yeah, man, like if you ever want to train, like, I'd be happy to show you. I'll train it. Yeah, I'd be happy to. But then leave it at that and like wait for them if they're interested, and they might try it out and they might not like it. And then like, because I've trained some people, they try it once and they're like, they don't ask again. And then some people, they will ask again. And so you just kind of leave it for them.
There's a TikToker, or not a TikToker, another podcaster who I just saw on TikTok, and he made some analogy, and I don't think this is exactly what he said, but I'm still going to try to communicate the idea, is that you shouldn't like drown soil that's not ready for growth, sort of thing. Or the point is that you shouldn't like bombard people who aren't ready. Like when the right time is for like when they're ready to make the changes. That's when like you make them aware of whatever it is you want them to do, or whatever ideas you want them to think about, and then you wait for them to be ready. And then when they get to that point, you happily grab their hand and you walk side and side together and figure it out.
Sometimes they never get to that point, and that's when you have to let go,
Oof. That's a big one.
Yeah.
But you mentioned, I really don't want to come back to this because I wanted to move on, but I'm just going to briefly mention it, that you were talking about specifically like more so like friends scenarios where you're trying to influence your friends, because at the end of the day, I think you want the best for them. So you think, I've had success doing this, I think they will too. But then you think about kids, especially like very young kids, like their parents look at them like kind of like a blank canvas, and then they can just implement all the success that they had in their life, if they have, or give them the success that they never had. And that's why they try to push the things that they love so much. But at the end of the day, it's like genetics, it's like the situations of how the kid grows up and whatever you believe about that, but like you can't really control how your kid is going to turn out and what he's going to like, or he or she is going to like.
Absolutely. And of course we're just speculating, because neither of us have had children. We're talking about our own experiences with our parents and our thoughts on that.
It's very different when you're talking about friends versus or parents or family versus like
children,
a human that you brought into this one.
Whose brains are all moldable and mushy and stuff. And I guess again, it's just the point is to don't see them as a mini me. They're not just a replica of you. This is again speculation. Not going to claim to know about parenting. This is just the ideas that I carry with me at the moment of how I think I'll go about in the future. Is to just try my best to realize they're their own person and just enjoy how they unfold.
So we were talking about your business, right? That was like your main. You're chasing your passion. But you want to talk about like some other ways you are.
Yeah. Great example is that I started doing kizomba dancing earlier. A brief explanation of that is it's a dance style that originated in Angola, Africa, which is in Central Africa on the coast. And then, of course, that country at one point was imperialized by the Portuguese. So like some Latin elements were thrown into it, and I think that's how it like got to Brazil or to Latin America at one point, which is why I found this style of dancing through the salsa club at Georgia Tech. But I attend this free kizomba class that this wonderful woman named Yannick, I think that's the way to say her name. Of course, I've already invited both of you, and
that's a very unique name.
Anyways. So because this dance style is culturally very different as it originates in Angola. And so there's a lead and a follow role, typically the male and female role. So it's really pushed me because like from the get-go, I've gone to 2 lessons now. The first lesson, like you start dancing, especially like I'm usually the lead, or that's the role that I assume in that environment. And from like the first 5 minutes, like you're expected to like lead someone, like a woman or someone who follows in the steps that you're going through as a group. And so just teaching you to, you know, be assertive in the moment, to dance, like you're dancing with multiple different partners and stuff. You're pretty much clueless. You don't know what you're doing, but you're still expected to lead. So you just have to go for it and make your mistakes proudly, I guess. And so that has just really pushed me to, first of all, like I grew up hardly dancing at all. So dancing has been something that's come very difficult to me, especially in public. And so I've like been very stiff up until recently when I started challenging myself to just like loosen up and dance more often in front of people. And so yeah, that component has pushed me out of my comfort zone, and to just be more decisive, assertive in a healthy way on the dance floor in terms of leading someone who's following is really I think been very good for me.
You can see your courage points going up.
Absolutely, yeah. And of course, like the end goal, I watch like the older guys at these dance lessons, and of course like they have the rhythm, they have the moves, and of course like the end goal is like I want to be able to like dance comfortably with a partner or like other people and be able to lead. It becomes so second nature of like moving to the rhythm and leading, is that I don't have to think about anymore, and I just like experience like a dance and a flow with somebody else.
Yeah, and you're seeking discomfort in a way that's purposeful.
Yeah. And I realized that, like, I'm not gonna lie, this second lesson that I went to, like, I almost like was feeling a little nauseous at one point because it was just like really gut wrenchingly discomfort, and I was honestly exhausted after the second session because it was just like mentally I was having to push myself so much to just keep on going, like one minute after another, just constantly going through the steps. We even like danced at one point in front of everybody, and of course like I messed up and I was nervous, but I just went for it. And I realized that, you know, I've gone through 2 lessons, and like to get to the point that I want to of being able to like lead comfortably and just enjoy the moment, that I'm gonna have to go to dozens of more lessons. But I'm willing to, you know, make that investment into my future to be able to experience that type of dancing and connection that I want.
Yeah, and then you'll be able to dance with people, and they'll be like, "Oh, wow, this is really fun."
Yeah,
and you'll be able to like
empower others to.
Yeah, they'll
it.
feel more comfortable around you because you're so loose, and you'll be able to like make events that you go to more enjoyable. You'll be a positive influence there, and so you're seeking discomfort in a purposeful way, and it's better for other people.
Thanks, you just made that.
No. I'm basically saying that it's like it's a good
I mean, you might do it for a selfish reason, as to like,
well, that
do something fun for yourself, but
that's a great point, because I think dancing at parties is so much more fun than people standing around doing nothing. So if I can get to a point where I encourage other guys to like to start dancing, because usually guys are a little bit more hesitant, and then be able to like lead other girls and just like having fun, that'd be a great party trick.
Maybe, it just spreads positivity.
Absolutely.
Because there's ways to seek discomfort and that would not be good for other people, or like even just if it makes other people feel bad, then don't do it, because you're literally it's completely selfish. You're raising yourself up at the expense of other people. I think there's like, because some people might be able to take that message and justify it. I've known some people who will be like, oh yeah, you know, like I'm just an asshole, and then they'll go and do something asshole, and it's like it makes it okay, and it's like, no, you're just being inconsiderate to other people. You can't say like, oh, I'm, you know, that this is just how I am, and use it as an excuse. So I think because sometimes people will use messages like that, like be true to yourself or seek discomfort, improve yourself, and you're like, okay, and then you're just like, well, screw everyone else, I'm just gonna go and do this, and it's like, no, hey, like you gotta keep in mind what the real point is.
That's a good point. And I want to ask you too, like, I know we both do weightlifting. Something like I constantly hear is like, ideally bulking should be slightly uncomfortable. because your body, like your mind, I think, likes the norm, right? Whatever the norm is, it likes to stay in a state of, I guess, a level state where nothing really changes. It doesn't like change. And so when you start changing things, like when you're bulking, you're just adding calories to your diet, it's uncomfortable for your body because it's like, oh, I'm not really hungry right now. I have to eat more than I normally do. And same thing when you're cutting, it's like, oh, I want food. And it's growling at you all day, especially if you're not handling it well. And like, you know, and then when you talk about fasting, that's like the ultimate way of, I know you've done a little bit of fasting. Both of you have done a little bit of fasting. That's when you talk about training your body, especially, obviously that'll have an effect on your mind, but that also trains your body, which we both do that, and I think those are really good ways of chasing discomfort, especially if you have like physical goals. And yeah, I don't know if you wanted to talk more about like what you've seen with jiu-jitsu.
So first off, with the bulking and cutting example you just mentioned, should it be slightly uncomfortable enough? Because if it's too uncomfortable, like Nathaniel had mentioned in the beginning, falling off the edge, if you try and eat 5,000 calories a day right now, like all in one meal, you know, just like get it all in, like you'll probably quit. If you try and cut too many calories at once, you'll probably quit, and then that's not very helpful. So it's finding that balance of like usually it's, you know, if you're bulking slowly or cutting slowly, people tend to have more success with that because they won't burn out and quit. Yeah. And so, you know, I think that you got to balance.
I think you also have better results with slower bulking. Like you don't put on as much fat as muscle.
Yeah.
Just because you're not like, I think it's easier over time for your body to put on muscle. But if you're like eating a lot of calories and it's just like, oh, you can only put on a certain amount of muscle, like it's just going to turn to fat.
You get the correct adaptation response.
Yes. Ooh. Yeah.
So you got to balance the level of discomfort there. For jiu-jitsu though, I think that a lot of people struggle with when they first start. They're kind of thrown into this ocean, and it's hard because you're just like, I don't know what to do. I want to focus. Sometimes you'll ask people like, hey man, like what you working on? And they're like, everything. I hear that a lot. And for me, like I used to be that way. But as soon as I was like, let me focus on specific areas that I'm struggling with, that I want to do, that are in line with my nature. That's a big part, because you can go and pursue things that you really hate that you're also bad at in jiu-jitsu. And that wouldn't be as helpful. So what I would do is always go towards areas that I'm struggling with, that I want to incorporate in a logical way. For me right now, it was my guard passing used to be really bad. So I like, okay, that's an uncomfortable area because I haven't explored it. Let's go explore it and get better at that. Before, I used to be a guard puller, so I would like, wrestlers were like the bane of my existence. So it's like, no, let me, like my first competitions too, I was like really stressed out about.
Can you elaborate what guard pulling means?
So guard pulling essentially, by the rules of jiu-jitsu, if you're in a tournament, you have to get one grip and then you can sit to your butt. Normally it would just be, you start in your guard, which is your legs are between you and your opponent. So imagine just somebody sitting on their butt with their legs in front of them, like a butterfly position, and then like scooting on their butt. That was I was team butt scooter is what we used to call ourselves. Because like you can still be, especially with the rule set of jiu-jitsu, you can be very effective, and like that's the whole thing. Like you can, you know, fight off your back, and you know, like I can play that way if I want to, but I realized I wanted to get better at takedowns, and that was really I was so bad. I'm still really bad, and it was really uncomfortable because for takedowns you have to commit to them, and if you mess up, you get punished real hard real quick. So you have to be like, I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail, but you're going to fail when you do these things. And a lot of techniques in jiu-jitsu, when you first start incorporating them, you won't do them very successfully, and it'll be embarrassing because you're so sloppy and you want to be smooth. But if you really isolate, okay, I want to just focus on this component, it'll be uncomfortable right now, but I'm going to pursue it, and then incrementally build up resistance where it's a little bit, you know, higher resistance and more than full rolling. Exactly. Yeah. That's why I love training with brand new people, is because I get to try really wacky stuff that wouldn't work on later people.
Right.
So you can, because it's like dumbbells of like, okay, I've got this new technique. I'm pretty shitty at it. It's, let's say, a 10-pound dumbbell. And you're like, okay, let's slowly increment it. And you get the reps in on varying levels. And then, so you're still seeking discomfort, because if the 10 pounds is easy, you should just be moving up. So, because like it's easy to get, you develop your game and then you can become stagnant in it. And then that's not very good, because you need you need to connect to other areas. For instance, I love the guillotine. For context, it's a specific choke, but I threaten it all the time, to the point where it's like, it gives me so much control, and it constantly gets my opponent thinking, and my game is kind of based around that. I could be and I kind of have been a little bit lazy, because it makes my life so much easier, because I'm so familiar with what people do. And like I said, my whole game is developed around it. But because of that, I haven't been very good in gi. So there's gi jiu-jitsu and no gi jiu-jitsu. Guillotines aren't very good in gi.
Could you just explain what a gi is?
Yeah, so a gi is like karate clothing. It's very grippy. It's like rough pajamas.
So basically there's rolling where you wear the karate uniform, and there's rolling where you don't wear regular clothes.
Yeah. In a competition to see who can look the most ridiculous, and there's spandex. And because of that, I neglected a lot of the gi stuff, because I didn't have my game, my stuff that I was really good at. It was really uncomfortable. Ooh, these grips, these people are getting a hold of me. I don't like that. I'm not used to that.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like, no. Before, and then like I approached it even with the wrong mindset of like, okay, I'm gonna go into get better at gi jiu-jitsu, and I'm just going to learn how to strip grips and just like implement my no-gi game, but with like, by preventing their gi game. It's like, or I could learn how to use the gi effectively, which is uncomfortable for me because I'm unfamiliar with it. But I'm in gi jiu-jitsu. I should probably learn how to use the gi.
Yeah.
So I think that's how it would apply as far as that.
You mentioned it before, but you were saying, especially when you come into do you call it dojo? I don't know what you guys call it.
No, I call it a gym.
You come into the gym, you see everyone that like knows what they're doing, and it's very intimidating. And I think that fundamentally comes down to comparison is the thief of joy. And you're comparing yourself to all these people that know what they're doing, or that are at a better place than you are, whether it's the gym, whether it's here, whether you're just comparing yourself to your friends, whatever it is, right? And I think that fundamentally comes down to, okay, the healthier way of living on your edge. I put it down to 4 reasons, and I just want to talk about them. Which is one, goal setting, knowing like where you're starting and setting goals for yourself, so that you're only comparing yourself to yourself. And then paired with that is accountability. Like, are you actively working towards that goal? Because if you are, then there's no need to compare yourself to others, because you're succeeding. And then the third thing I would say is having friends who are ambitious and hold you to your values, so that they're constantly checking. It's like a second level of accountability, It's like, oh, okay, you do this all the time. It's like, oh, what are you doing? Or have you done Muay Thai yet? Like, you talk about it all the time. Yeah. And I finally did it. Like, I've been putting it off for a while, and I finally did it because, you kept pushing me to do it, and I also did want to do it. And then the last thing I would say, I know I just mentioned a bunch of things, but the last thing I'd say is like having a daily routine makes this so much easier. And in general, just planning out your week ahead of time, like especially as a student, I think when you get caught up in, we talked about this, but when you get caught up in school stress, it's easy to, if you don't plan to do things out of your comfort zone, or in general, any hobbies, it's easy to just go about your day and like think, oh, I just need to study today. Like, and then you just get caught up in the stress of that. It's like you said, like you set up this many hours to do something, and you'll use that many hours to do it. Versus if you said, okay, I'll just do it for 2 hours, then I'll go to jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, or I'll go to the gym for 2 hours, and then like plan out your entire schedule. So I think that if you're actually planning out your schedule, it helps you a lot more to live on your edge. So those are the 4 things that I'd say for me have helped.
I have some thoughts about that 4th point, especially.
Okay. Maybe we should start with the first one. The first one is goal setting. And I guess like...
I think that all of them are pretty straightforward, but the last one has a little bit of nuance that needs to be added, because this is something of my nature of like, I will plan out uncertainty into my day, which is not like, so this would be, you can do that, right? You can be like, okay, I'm going to do this and it's going to be uncomfortable, but that might be the rock kingdom too much stability there, because you do need some sort of wiggle room when you plan out all these things, right? So it's, you need to plan it, but also you could do a little bit more of like the water tribe and see the opportunities as they come of like, oh, this is an uncomfortable opportunity that could help me, expand my comfort zone. Maybe you take it there, and it might not be in line with your schedule, but you can see that in the moment and take that opportunity. Whereas if it's too rigid, you'll never be able to exceed what you planned, because if you're too staunch in it,
Ooh, that's a good
right?
point.
It's like if everything goes according to plan, nothing will go better than you plan it for. So you lose that in there. So part of it is like, it will really help. And I've noticed this with people who are too much of like airbenders or waterbenders, is that they can struggle with the planning of their schedule, and like they're just too free form. They're just like, yeah, I just get my schoolwork done when I feel like it, and then they're just like overwhelmed and like, oh my god, I've got so many things to do, and
that's me.
They struggle with. And then some people like me can be over plan things, and then it's like so dead and static. So you've got to find that balance in that. So part of it is incorporate it, because you want to plan to make sure that you actually get those things and you don't stay in your comfort zone, because if you don't plan it, then you might not do it. But then also maybe incorporate the mindset and have that looseness of, I discovered something new, I need to pursue this, it wasn't in the plan.
That comes back down to, like we were talking before, knowing your strengths, knowing your weaknesses. Like, I'm more of a airbender, like I'm more free flowing. Maybe you're more of a, what would we say, you're more
rock kingdom.
You're more like grounded. So knowing your strengths, and then, especially with my schedule, it's not like I'm completely booked all throughout, even like knowing when I'm sleeping and like, things like that. It's more just like, okay, I have this booked, so I know everything I need to get done today. And I have time to do other things, but it's just like, these are the set things I had that I need to get done today, and just a level of accountability that I know that I need to get these things done. And also just planning new things too, it helps when you put it on your schedule. You're like, okay, I'm gonna finally stop putting off doing so and so, I'm gonna put it on my schedule, and then I cannot not do it. And then you go tell your friends about it. You're like, hey, I'm gonna do this Thursday, do you want to come along? Or like, just tell them so that they can keep you accountable. And I think all these things combined are like the perfect way, at least for me. This has worked really well for me. That's all I can really tell people, is this has worked well for me. If you're struggling, maybe try it.
Yeah, like find your balance. If you're also an airbender, maybe incorporate some rock in there, because rock, the airbenders. It applies. Because the airbenders struggle with the rock bending, or like Aang, he was an airbender. He struggled with that, right? So you can kind of, but some people, they might be on the other extreme. So I think it comes back to, who is your authentic self? Like, what kind of avatar are you? Right. So. Well, these things can
uses all the, I guess,
and so do we. We use all elements, but we might be.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
But Aang was an airbender first and foremost, but he was also the avatar. He had the other ones. So, like each of us, we have our natures. So this would be really good for people like you. Yeah. So with that, in terms of scheduling, I think it comes to like knowing yourself and finding that balance.
Because there is such a thing as decision fatigue, or I don't know if decision fatigue, or like exposing yourself to new experiences. This is something I think I was dealing with at this last dance session, where like you're doing so many new things that require so much like effort as you're exploring new territory, that you start to get a little bogged down by life. This is, I guess, is on another extreme. We're talking about doing too much versus too little. So I guess you do have to be mindful about that. There are moments, like there was one moment last week where I was like, okay, I did so many new things, and I was almost about to like go almost to start like begin like unhealthy coping mechanisms with it. I was about to fall into like that, about to fall into a cycle of unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I was like, okay, Nathaniel, like you don't want to do unhealthy stuff, but like let's go create a comfortable situation for yourself. So I went back to my place. I ate some food that like ate dinner that I always eat. I pretty much like eat the same thing almost every day. I ate that. I listened to music that I already had liked. It was my favorite music, and I just listened to music that was comfortable and stuff. I ate food. I just chilled at my place, very comfortable environment, recharged, and I guess like prepared myself again.
That's beautiful. Like that, I think that's such an important point, because what's one of the most critical parts of progressive overload? Make sure to take some rest.
Yes.
If you don't rest, you will overtrain and you will not get the adaptation response.
Or you'll injure yourself.
Yeah, or injure yourself. So that's really like, it's great that you had that foresight. Like you could, like you were in tune with yourself enough to be able to say, hey, I need some comfort, and not feel bad about it, and understand that it's actually helpful. Because some, like for me, I know like if I take breaks, I can be so hard on myself and just really like I hate it. No, I don't want to take a break. But sometimes I have to. Or like times when I've taken, say like I wasn't able to train very much jiu-jitsu, then I come back and it's like I'm better.
Yeah.
I like it more. I think that's so important.
Refreshed. Yeah. I was kind of proud of myself because this happened about 2 weeks ago, and it was the first time ever that I like processed this in a healthy way, where I had been living at my edge for a while, and then it was like time for rest and recovery.
Yeah.
And I think I didn't even see it, but like you perfectly connected it to a working out environment. And like you said, you will come back refreshed and energized and more engaged later.
I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because you're also introverted, and I've heard that introverts have a tendency to be reflective, and I find that sometimes I can be like experiencing all the time, and I don't have enough time to reflect, and it can kind of bog me down. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I ate a lot of these experiences, now I need to go and digest it, like in a reflexive mode. Do you find that?
Absolutely. And that's one of like, when it comes to mental health, or I guess we'll just connect it to your experience. That's why I believe like journaling is absolutely important. Taking the time to be by yourself and to like be in a quiet environment to reflect, and then to by writing it down, by concentrating your thoughts, putting into words, is what helps you digest it and work through that within yourself. So that's why I'd absolutely that's my method of doing so. Because you're right, when there's been times where I've been like too busy and I'm just like going throughout the day, and I've done that several days in a row, and I'm just like, okay, like I just did all this stuff these last few days, and I haven't taken a single time to actually like think about my actions, what other people said, you know, things that I should remember about, like if I'm trying to like study the people around me, and I haven't actually learned anything because I never took the time to go over it. And you got to take time to plan as well.
I wonder if we grow when we experience things, or if we grow when we reflect on the experience.
It's probably both, I'd say.
Well, if you're talking about it in terms of like digestion, like ultimately you get the nutrients through the process of digestion in order to...
But you need to eat it in order to get it.
Exactly.
Yeah, but I think also in the way, because you have past experiences that you can reflect on in a different way, and then grow from them again. It's like taking that same food that's just like sitting in your stomach undigested, digesting it in a different way.
That'd be awesome, right? We could just keep eating.
Yeah. Or I guess maybe it's because memory is like a form of re-experiencing it. Yeah, because I think reflection's kind of critical. 'Cause sometimes I feel like you can go and do things and then it just goes through. And it's like you didn't have the chance to hold on to it and say, wait a minute, like what's going on here? And maybe you do get some like underlying growth from there, because you kind of can't help but process things. So like for instance, if you play a sequence on a keyboard and then take a break, that sequence, the neurons that were used to play that will refire that exact same pattern many times over in just a 10-second period. So anytime we do anything, we do kind of reflect on it by re-experiencing it.
Yeah.
But I suppose because in normal learning, they've found that if you have like a 90-minute learning session and then do some sort of non-sleep deep rest, so that could be laying in bed and just kind of chilling, not thinking about anything, you'll have that same kind of neural replay where you're like, your brain's just automatically reflecting on the events, and that's greatly improves learning. And the same thing with sleep, where it's like that's where it consolidates things. So maybe there is some level of like in the moment, in the experience acquisition of like learning and growing, but maybe it really is like you need to have these periods of reflection so you actually can grow further and amplify it, because that's where like the meat of it is.
Absolutely, because I would say as you were talking, several examples came to my mind from personal experience where I would say the most self-aware, the people with the quote-unquote most personality, were the ones who had spent the most time journaling their thoughts, actions, and feelings, or like reflecting, like being intentional, I guess, with their times when they're thinking to themselves about their experiences. Because I would say, at least this is just like a working definition that I have so far, that your personality is really, or like how thorough or big your personality is really how specific and strong are your reactions to ideas. And people with quote unquote the most personality seem to have the most specific and strongest reactions to ideas, whether it's the way you dress, your opinions about food, shows, languages, different countries, podcasts, all of that. People with big personalities, like when we brought Otis on, he had an opinion, a well thought out opinion about everything. And several people have commented to me about, wow, he had such a great personality and stuff. Like he seemed like a sharp young man, that sort of thing. And when I went into this idea with other examples in my life, I realized like all these people were by far the most reflective. They were journaling about everything and stuff. They were reading books about everything. They were always like thinking about big ideas or going like really diving into the details of their own personal experiences to discover how they like viewed them versus just like scrolling on TikTok for hours and hours, and you're just being exposed to like your brain is just in a numb, mindless state and nothing ever happens.
Yeah, I think that's actually, it's important to self-improvement in two ways. One, in like an explicit way like that, and then there's like an implicit way of that, or I should say maybe more like a meta way of within the self-improvement like books and all that. You do also have to be reflexive or like reflect and digest. Yeah, I was doing combinatorics, and so I was like on my exam I was doing something with that. Reflect. And where was I? But okay, so sometimes you can get ideas from other people about self-improvement, and you can just take it and go. But it might help to stop and think about it for a while, because I think a lot of people, they want some easy packages and recipes to follow, and they don't critically think, does this actually work for me? Because what I found the older I get is there are no recipes for anything at all. You can have guidelines and some ideas. You can say, this worked for me. And then you can say, like, I saute onions this way. But
are there multiple ways to saute onions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
For different effects.
Yeah.
For different effects?
For different effects.
Taste, textures.
Yeah. What do you want? What works for you?
I thought
What
it was
like
just like soft and salty and
Nope.
what? No.
You can get all sort like
Brown.
onions are super complex, so you can get a lot of different flavors.
But I
from
thought
them.
sauteing them was a specific way of cooking them.
So it is a specific technique,
This is very-
but even in there you can go. Yeah, no, I think it's important because you
harp
can,
on the analogy too much, okay? Let them speak.
No,
Let
I
them
think
speak.
I think it's not even just like, I think it's directly here of like you can critically think and somebody gives you a recipe of like, hey, we're gonna make lasagna, right? But you can think like, okay, why do I even like ricotta or do I like cottage cheese in it? Like, and then it's like it's not in the recipe. Don't follow it.
Ricotta's the love of my life. What are you talking about?
Okay, I'm not gonna go more on the lasagna, or else we're just gonna hate each
No.
other.
We have to end this podcast sometime.
Wait. Or you finish your thought because I had like a good...
So I to finish the thought of that, like there are no recipes, and a lot of self-improvement books are here's a recipe, and people take it and they don't reflect. You need to critically think, is this person telling me, is this true? Does this work for me? And how will I apply it in my life? What's the overall concept or principle? Because so many people would be like, okay, here's how you make a business. Here's how you get this is how you get clients. And it's like, I'm sure you've experienced this where like, there's probably tons of people on YouTube who are just like gurus or like, yeah, do this and you'll get 1,000 new clients today. And it's like, but you've probably found that no, there's a lot to it, and the way you're going to find clients is not necessarily the way they do it, but there's probably some big principles you can take away that will help. But don't try to follow the recipe because it'll probably fail. Like if I take something from Gordon Ramsay and I say, okay, I'm going to do this, it's probably not going to be as good as him. Why? It's because the world's way too complex for that. And same thing with these books and these people on YouTube. The world's so complex that we need to have a little bit more we need to think about it for ourselves and come to our own conclusions, because then it'll be more adaptable as we go forward. We can adjust our own thoughts because we have the starting place. If somebody gives you a recipe, it's a recipe. It's like in stone. It's not until you make it your own that you can start to adjust it.
Yeah, that was a great point, because I think in this world of gurus and like self-help books, something as like an impressionable young person, as I started to like read those books and watch those videos to get into this world, is that I would like take their word as law, and be like, what they think is what I should think, and I should just copy and emulate them. And you find that you're not going to be as successful, or you're not going to be as adaptable, like you said, because you have to make it yours. And this is even referencing our past video as critiquing the manosphere, specifically like the Hamza channel, because we watched a video by Michael Drift, and he made this great critique about Hamza's channel, about how he was recommending like everybody copy his videos and stuff to ride the coattails of the algorithm and all that.
No, he was saying start your self-improvement channel and like even critique me.
Yeah. But they were all just copying him, all doing the Jeffrey versus the Adonis thing and stuff. And Michael Drift made a great point, I think, talking about other people's content, that ultimately all these people, all these self-help books, all these YouTubers and entrepreneurs that we follow, they are ultimately only sharing their story about what worked for them. It's not stone. It's not written in stone. It's not law. It's not the only way that works. It's, consume this content, digest it, like find those principles that you can benefit from, but you have to like learn how to make it yours and apply critical thinking to these concepts in order for it to actually manifest itself in a good way in your life.
Yeah, for sure. Especially with content creation, you have to realize, something I realized too is like no one wants a clone of another YouTuber. Like the biggest value of being a YouTuber on YouTube is the authenticity of your unique views and lifestyle, I guess. And so if you're trying to just copy someone else, I don't think you're going to, maybe you could be successful. I guess that's what some people do with like I guess imitation is totally different, but my point stands, and I was just agreeing with you that especially with content creation, it's important to be your authentic self and to do some critical thinking about like the content you consume and your beliefs. Is like, are you actually just believing this because you're coping and you're looking for success or happiness or whatever, or are you believing it because you actually find it to be valid? And that's some thoughts that everyone should be having, especially as you are chasing discomfort and progressively overloading. But I think that's a good stopping point.
One more on that is that
I have one more too.
That is critically thinking is a form of seeking discomfort, because it's easy to take recipes from people. It's hard to think about it yourself and come up with your own plan off of that. So probably one of the best ways of seeking discomfort you could do is critically think.
Yep. And the point I was going to make is that I loved how we kind of wrapped up on this point, because it brings the whole episode full circle back to the point from The Way of the Superior Man about giving your gift to the world, is that your gift is unique to you. It's different from everybody else's and stuff. So if you try to copy someone else's, it ain't going to work out.
Yeah. No recipe for giving your gift.
Exactly.
You got to create it yourself.
Absolutely.
I think that's why he leaves the word gift, as far as I've noticed in the book, it seems like it's very ambiguous. Even some like Davidson, he said like, oh, I don't like understand what it means. It's because I think it's meant to be ambiguous, because you're supposed to figure out like, how can I provide like the most value to this world that I'm in, to this floating rock. And so now I can now am I good to
go ahead?
To come to an ending note on the podcast. Hopefully you guys are still with us. It's almost 2 hours in.
Holy crap, what?
It's like an hour and 40 minutes.
Dang.
Oh, wow.
Our longest podcast by far. Hopefully you're
Hey,
still
well, when you're having a good time.
flowing.
Yeah.
If you're still here, I'm guessing you've enjoyed the content. So drop a like, go down to that comment section, leave a nice critiqueful or just nice comment for me to read. I appreciate constructive criticism, so I'd love to hear what you guys have to say, or any improvements I can make to the podcast. I'd love to hear those too. Oh yeah, if you want to connect with me on Instagram, I got my Instagram down below, or if you want to be on the podcast, just hit me up. And yeah, I've enjoyed you guys being on the podcast. Thanks for being with me,
been a pleasure.
and take care, guys.
See you.